we stream it.
Oh, okay.
So we can call that
Gotcha.
live.
Yeah.
Cool.
Are we going on the air now?
Hello, Mike.
We're live.
Good evening. Welcome to the March 21st meeting of the Historic Conservation Commission for the City of Bethlehem. I'm Craig Evans, I'm the Vice Chairman of the HCC, and I'd like to introduce the commission. Jeffrey Long, our Historic Officer and a Registered Architect. Charles Patrick, a business owner, not present this evening. Seth Cornish, a licensed real estate broker. Ken Lausch, resident of the Mount Airy District, not present. Roger Hudak, resident. Mike Simonson, Chief Building Inspector. Desiree Strasser, resident in the Mount Airy District. It is the purpose and intent of the City of Bethlehem to promote, enhance, and preserve historic resources and traditional community character for the education, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the public through the preservation, protection, and regulation of buildings and areas of historic interest or importance within the city, which have been determined to be of local, state, or national significance. The way the meeting will unfold is the applicants will be taken in order after identifying the project address, and the presenters, our historic officer, will provide a background on the building and any recommendations. At that time, the applicant will present their project and plan. The board will then address the project, allow for public comment, and ultimately create a motion to approve as presented, approve with modifications, or table the project with clear recommendations, or deny the project with reasons for the denial and changes or improvements which would result in a positive recommendation. For public comment, there is a 3-minute time limit, and comments must be specific to the attributes of the building only. Speakers are to announce themselves with their name and address before speaking. The HCC is a recommending board, and the results of our meeting will be presented to City Council, and their vote will be binding. Please do not forget to secure your permit from the permit office on the first floor of City Hall before you begin your project. Above all, I remind everyone to conduct themselves in a civil manner and always use a civil tone. The commission is here to help you with your project. We are a group of volunteers who are dedicated to historic preservation and restoration of older buildings in Bethlehem and beyond. If any commission members have a conflict of interest with any of the applications on tonight's agenda, please come forth at this point. I ask everyone to please sign in. There is a 45-minute time limit on new proposals for large projects. Upon a second visit to the commission for large-scale projects, the following will be required: an architectural plan with lot lines, setbacks, defined architectural features, all measurements including the amount of floors, foundations, walls, parapet, window sizes, and the like, a complete set of elevation drawings of the building with streetscape drawings showing the new structure in context with surrounding buildings is required, along with any cut sheets or project or product samples necessary for the discussion. And with that, we will begin our meeting. We take the applications in the order they were presented, and our first item on the agenda this evening is 331 Broadway. Is that represented?
Yes.
Okay, please state your name and
Devon
tell us
Epps.
about your, I guess, Jeffrey, you'd be next to,
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Property at 331 Broadway, the building description, period style, and defining features. This structure is a semi-detached end unit in a series of similar 2.5-story brick masonry row houses that were constructed in circa 1885. The street level facade currently has a brick veneer in light brown color with a half-height storefront shop window and a recessed storefront entrance. A sign box above the brick veneer extends across the length of the lower facade. The original brick masonry of the building's remaining facades was treated with a stucco veneer and given an etched pattern often referred to as brick coat in an imitation yellow brick sometime during the mid-20th century. 2 double-hung windows are evenly spaced along the upper-level facade, while the dormer with a pair of slender double-hung windows is not centered along the mansard roof. Various facade modifications prevent an assignment of a specific architectural style to this structure. However, similar neighboring structures can be described as simplified classical revival style with Italianate influences. Proposed alteration, the applicant proposes to remove the aluminum plate on the existing sign box and replace the former 144-inch by 24-inch sign face with a new sign face of the same size. The guideline citations from my assessment include the Secretary of Interior Standards number 9. That standard concerns new additions, exterior alterations, and related new construction, meaning it will not destroy historic materials, features, spatial relationships, etc., that categorize a contributing structure. Also, the Bethlehem Ordinance that was read by Mr. Evans at the beginning of tonight's meeting. My evaluation, the effect on the Historic Conservation District, and my recommendations. The Certificate of Appropriateness application indicates the intent to remove the blank panel within the existing aluminum sign box and replace it with a new vinyl sign printed onto a 2-piece, 3-millimeter thick composite backer. The new sign measures 24 inches tall by 144 inches wide and includes a black background with a stylized circle in the left portion of the sign in a bright white color. Within the circle are the words source code, followed on the next line by the word fashions, all in contemporary sans serif lettering. They're all in bright white color. Above the business name are the stylized letters SC in cursive, all uppercase lettering in a medium red color. That's a little hard to see on the submittal, so I especially call out that detail. Beneath the business name is the text, Urban Style Made Simple. That's all in smaller, contemporary sans serif lettering in a medium red color. The circle logo corresponds with the existing logo on the blade sign that was assessed during the HCC meeting on January 18 of 2019. At the right of the circle logo are the words source code repeated in much larger sans serif lettering in bright white color, with the initial uppercase letters in medium red, followed by the word fashions in the next line in smaller sans serif lettering in bright white color. Relevant signage design guidelines. We do have guidelines specific for signage that accompany our design guidelines. They note that HCC, quote, encourages the removal of pre-manufactured stock extruded aluminum sign boxes, end quote. During the previous HC assessment of the blade sign on January the 18th, 2019, the applicant confirmed at that time that the aluminum sign box was no longer functional. So the resulting certificate that approved the blade sign had the following stipulation, quote, the existing sign box no longer illuminates, so the front panel will receive a blank replacement, and we see that blank replacement in the application currently. However, that stipulation continues. The applicant has the option of replacing the sign box, so not the sign, but the sign box itself at a later date with a flat sign. However, that sign would require subsequent HCC review and approval. So at that time, we did request the applicant, when he or she comes back to us, that a replacement sign would require assessment, which we're doing tonight. However, that also stated because HCC encourages the removal of those kind of pre-manufactured box signs in tandem with a sign that the box itself should be removed. And I'm not seeing the removal of the box with the application. I'm seeing the request to change out the blank with a new sign. And so it contradicts the one stipulation of the, I think, 5 from the previous certificate. So in my opinion, the proposal to replace the blank with a new sign is inappropriate for that reason. because the sign box is intended to remain. And we'll give the applicant time to clarify. Maybe I'm misinterpreting. In my opinion, appropriate alternatives to this current proposal are potentially three: removal of the sign box that was envisioned by HCC. I'm assuming there'll be some damage, so the facade would need to be repaired, and then install a new sign on a rigid backer in that approximate location. We would still need to see it, I think, because you'd probably want to center it between the windows or give it some kind of relationship. Right now, the box sign doesn't really have a relationship to anything else. It could also be centered above the window. With the facade renovations in the mid to late 20th century, all of those typical storefront details are lost. So there's no lower cornice, there's no sign band. So I understand his difficulty. He doesn't really have a traditional place to put a horizontal sign. Alternative to that, if perhaps he wants to keep the sign box and still have a sign, could be keep it and put a sign perhaps above the storefront window. That's not traditional necessarily, but the storefront itself is no longer traditional. It doesn't have those historic concepts to it. So theoretically, it could perhaps go above the storefront and below the box sign. The third would be to also retain the box sign and simply put signage in the inside of the window. We've had that with several recent applicants as well. I can't remember the photograph accompanying this, but I did a walk by recently. Currently, there's a tree right in front of his location with no leaves, so you can actually see the sign box. But I went into Google Earth, and indeed, during the summer months, I question even being able to see the sign box once the tree comes out. So I know he's struggling with signage because the corner sign is probably not sufficient for the kind of foot traffic he wants. I just don't know if keeping that sign box behind that tree is also the right solution. But that'll have to be, his decision. I'm just putting forth. If I don't like to just say no, I like to come up with alternatives. So I'm suggesting those as possible alternatives. However, you have the ability to even decide his application is appropriate, and we can go from there. So if that's the case, if you decide it is appropriate as proposed, then I suggest still that we have all the bright white details to be a warm white or ivory, kind of traditional for our district. It's not required, but it's recommended for signage. There typically a pinstripe detail around the perimeter of the sign. I don't see that detail here. No, I went back in the minutes. We did not require the pinstripe around the round blade sign because the sign design is a circle. And so that was kind of considered its own pinstripe. But in this case, just kind of floating text in the middle of the sign needs some grounding, and we'd like to see kind of a frame around that. Also, we don't require it, but we often recommend lettering that has a serif to it. It's more of a historic lettering. Unless the lettering is part of the corporate logo, then we understand that he has to keep that lettering. Again, we can't require the serif lettering, but it's often recommended. So those are my recommendations if the current application is seen as appropriate within the existing sign. If the decision is to go with a different approach, then I would request that we have a little bit more appropriate submittal based on the application. The application states a scale drawing is required for all signs. And the hand sketch here, it does a good job of explaining the concept, but it's not to any kind of scale. As a reminder, I would need something I can actually put a scale to and understand proportionally. And for us, it's important to understand a sign in relation to other details of the building. So, an inch would equal a foot or, something like that. So I do see you have certain dimensions on here.
Yeah, I use those exact same drawings for the last meeting.
Yeah.
For the blade sign. And
yeah, I did
there
go.
was no problem.
Yeah, I went to that. I actually did make the same comment. It was missing those. But the commission felt like because it was a blade sign that was not really on the facade itself, they kind of bent the rules and allowed the hand sketch to go. But if you notice the right where it's checked on sign, it says a scale drawing is required. And again, I'm trying to just explain that helps us see the size of the sign, which we do have a scale of the sign, but then it helps us to understand how it fits the rest of the building. With all due respect, it's indicated here, but it's hard to know. I know for a fact that the box sign is not centered or aligned with the left door and the right window. So already I don't have a good sense of, the sign within the rest of the facade. But I'll let the commissioners, make the determination. I'm just here to explain the rules and interpret the guidelines. Again, I think they were being very kind to you before because it was the blade sign, but now that we're
That's
getting,
understandable, but if that was explained to me last time, I wouldn't have went ahead and paid $750 for a new sign if I would have known that all of the stuff you're mentioning now was a no-go. This is my first time hearing this, even about the drawing. Even when I thrown the drawing in and showed everyone, they said, okay, this is fine, just make the copies.
Just tell us about the sign.
so
Just
yeah,
tell us about
It's the same exact sign he explained. That box has been there for decades. And I just want to replace the blade, replace the aluminum that's there and put a new one. I don't have money to.
So let me ask you a question.
Mhm.
Can I ask you some questions? Cool. All right. So I'm looking at your sign here,
Mhm.
right? The color picture. Do you have any problem? Is it a difficult thing for you to make it a little bit less white? Just sort of off white a little bit.
Well, the sign was already made. Like the sign was already been produced. That's the same white as the blade sign. If it was a different color, then the blade sign and that sign would be two different colors. That white is the exact same color as the blade sign was.
yeah, the previous certificate requested the bright white of that sign also to be off-white or ivory.
So that was not done.
So according to his reaction, apparently that wasn't done at that time. Yeah.
Or it's the same color as the sign was, and that may have been just a little bit off.
And I don't know. I did check the certificate, and it did state that the bright white should be changed to ivory or off-white. So I was repeating
Mhm.
that same request from before.
I didn't read that anywhere. Recommendations to change this white sign. I was saying it's gonna be expensive. The box has been there for decades. It's gonna be expensive just to take the box out and place a sign. But it's okay to just leave the box sign up there and just have it looking old and the way it is with no problem. Which is, I really don't understand that. I don't have the money. I'm a small business. I barely made it through the pandemic, thanks to a loan from my mother. I don't have the money to actually now take out that entire box sign, have a new sign replace, lose the money I already paid for the sign that I had done.
So what you're saying is you've already had the sign.
Yes, I have that sign. The receipts are in that paperwork. I have that sign been
See,
paid
that's
for.
not a proposal. That's a receipt. So you've had it done already.
Yes.
So-
When I came the
so
last
why
time, I
are
had
you
the
here?
the last time I came, I had the sign done already. And I couldn't get anybody to actually make a design of the sign without me actually paying them to actually start the process anyway of me actually making a sign. I still had to put down half of the money just for them to even come up with the drawings and everything for it. And when everything was complete and he went to get the permits for the sign, they said he had to come to the historic district. I was under the impression, since the last time I came here, it was understood that I could just replace that flat piece and come and get the permits to do the sign. So when they said I had to come to the historic district, I said, okay, got the paperwork done and, set up for the meeting to come here.
The sign that you have is, the one that you have made up is only this center section, and it's placed on a panel?
It's placed right on the Right now, the existing black box that's there just has a plain black panel.
Right, right.
You
But
know?
on the new piece that you would like to put in,
Mhm.
does the part that you paid for cover the entire 12-foot by 2-foot?
Yes.
Or
Covers
is
the
it just
entire.
in the center of it?
No, it covers the entire section. That's what he was describing.
Right.
The two
Okay.
piece.
Well, what I was
12
getting
foot
at
by
was
2 foot.
whether there was a way to include a pinstripe around the existing panel.
Could I see if I could get him to put a pinstripe? Because a pinstripe that's not actually having to do the sign over.
Right.
It's just making an addition to the sign. So that,
Might be pretty cheap.
yeah, I could probably get it.
traditional in our district to have that definition that a pinstripe makes around the sign.
I was told to have him available, so I can call him and see if,
Could you try?
yeah, and like if that could be an option. For
You might be able to get him on the phone right now. We could put this to bed and be done with it.
Is there an aluminum border around the, that box?
Mhm.
There's like an aluminum border and you're
That
planning
holds
on,
it in.
are you planning on taking the whole aluminum box down and replacing it with, that's,
Now,
sorry.
Yes,
No,
I just had a question. This is Devon from
He's just putting the
Just
sign
Hold
on that
Fashions.
box. Okay, that's what I thought.
I wanted to know, would it be possible to add like an off-white pinstripe around that sign?
Around the sign, like a border.
Yeah.
Okay, it would be really difficult to make it the margins, exactly right because those flanges cover in varying amounts.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be really hard to know where to stop the pinstripe. So when you put it in frame, the margins are even all the way around. That would be really hard to do because it's kind of a floating panel. And I don't really know how far down those flanges go. It takes some, serious measurement. Plus, those things aren't straight. I think you're going to just accentuate the crookedness of the existing sign and the flanges that are on the side. I think it would. I mean, is this somebody's asking for this, like the historical people?
Yes.
Yeah, it'd be hard to do unless you waited till the sign was in and you did it in place.
Tell me also.
But it would, the margins would be hard to get the margins even. Is the problem? Just because the sign is not straight, the flanges they bolt down in different ways so that they don't form a straight line. So you put a nice straight white line next to that crooked silver line of the frame, it's going to look crooked. That's the only thing. If you put it inside, like way inside of that silver frame, it would hide a lot of it. But I'm just telling you, it's going to be. It'd be better to make a wide white border and just let it vary a little bit in thickness, rather than a pinstripe. Make just like the whole edge, like 3 inches of the whole edge all the way around a white. Make that white.
that would,
And then some of it will show and create a border. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Would be better.
So, I mean,
More
that'd be better than
appropriate.
trying to make a pinstripe.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's gonna look good.
Okay, 1 second. So how does that sound? Put in the white border. I don't know the difference between the pinstripe and the border, but you're saying like a
We're
3
actually
inch
talking
border.
about it right now.
Thickness.
Yeah.
we would be content with that approach, as opposed to because of the irregularity of the boxes there. If you made the border white and included that and it was wider, that would accomplish what we were looking to do.
Okay, yeah, so yeah,
Or to match
the
lettering
3 inch
or
border,
off
what
white,
you,
you already said it's a
how
white
much
line.
additionally would that
So do
cost
I.
me, you think?
Yeah.
I think it'll look better. I'm sorry about the
cost
color.
anymore.
Okay, no problem.
The-
So he said he can do that with no additional cost to me.
Okay, and we don't want the off-white. We want it.
Have
We
them
want
make
the
it-
white.
Whatever the color of the lettering is.
Whatever
it
the
should
color
be
of the lettering
same.
is, the color of the white on the border should be.
Okay, so the border and the letter coloring should be the same, the white.
Okay, just pure white.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. No problem.
Devon, thanks for having him available. That was good.
No
Good
problem.
move.
So in the future, you need to come here before you do signs, always.
We're trying to train the sign companies to realize that because, you know, their customers are getting in a bind. You know, we still have our job to do, but,
Yeah.
you know, just like you already have the sign, you know, it makes it awkward. So it's good that we can come to some conclusions here.
I would like to make a motion that we recommend approval of a certificate of historical appropriateness, that because the sign was already designed and made, that we will allow the white. But I want it to be very clear that we're only accepting it because the sign's already been made. I don't want to set a new precedent. Right? We'll allow it in the box without being lit with a roughly 3-inch border frame around the edge of the sign. Did I forget anything? Is that all right?
Is there someone to second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mike. All right, is there any other discussion? All right, Roger,
I'm
Seth,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
Desiree?
Aye.
Aye.
Carries unanimous.
You're good.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, guys.
All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Could have went either way.
Okay, other issues that we have are presentation or discussion item of the Southside lighting, a review of the minutes, and discussion also about possible awards. So those are the additional items that don't all appear on the agenda. But at this point, I would say we should look at or listen to, get some discussion about the Southside lighting. Diane,
Thank you.
you can sit down or you can stand up, whatever you're comfortable with.
want to turn?
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
I want to do that.
I don't. Oh, I don't care.
It's up to you, it's up to you.
Oh, sure. Representing this. South Bethlehem.
For the record, Diane, please give your name and address so it goes in the record.
My name's Diane LaBelle. I live at 54 East Church Street in Bethlehem, but I'm representing the Southside Tomorrow Committee, which is a steering committee that is a collaboration between the City of Bethlehem and the Community Action Development Corporation of Bethlehem. And I have been working with the development committee of this steering committee since 2016. And just a little background about what this steering committee, the mission of the steering committee is to promote social and economic change by fostering business and other economic opportunities with the community of South Bethlehem. So the development committee that I came on board with in 2016 and became, I think, the chair of that committee in 2017, we were, we, part of what this organization does when I came on is grant proposals were received from various aspects of the South Bethlehem community with and these proposals were multifaceted with interest in community participation from all areas of the community, arts and cultural, youth, and they all had elements of disparate kind of lighting aspects to them. And so it was suggested that we take a look at the overall lighting in South Bethlehem and try to come up with some type of a guide or a template for organizations to use if they were going to have lighting as part of what they were doing. Now, the Southside Vision Master Plan of 2014 to 2024, lighting along the north-south streets in South Bethlehem Commercial District was identified as a community priority. So this is something that we were already feeding into. It came to my awareness that we were working on these lighting aspects, but that there were certain parts of the city, like for instance, this body here, that didn't actually know what we were doing. And I thought that one way before we go farther and before organizations start to bring to you facade designs and various lighting elements and so on and so forth, that you kind of know what this committee was doing. So that's why I proposed to come here tonight and present to you what our committee has done over the last 6 years in terms of lighting on the south side. In 2018-19, just a little bit of the history, that's when the committee put together an RFP and asked lighting consultants to come up with guidelines for new structures, identify specific areas to target lighting. We were primarily concerned with the safety and the perception of safety. I don't think it's more about the perception than the actual reality of it. And to make it a pedestrian-friendly community, especially on the north-south streets, because a lot of work had been done on the east-west streets, but there hadn't been a lot of lighting that had been implemented on the north-south streets. So that's one of the things that we were focusing on. So the RFP went out and we interviewed agencies, and Beam is a firm from Philadelphia that came down, examined, and we approved their proposal, and they worked together with us on a study. And the first thing that came through in 2019 and 2020 was their lighting study that they created and presented to the steering committee. And this recommended that it was a consistent lighting quality. It related the local identity and place. It reinforced a sense of security for South Bethlehem residents, visitors, and guests. And it was a guide to implement exterior lighting strategies for roadways, sidewalks, buildings, and artwork. And the goals of these lighting recommendations were to improve the pedestrian experience, to create a comprehensive approach to street art and architectural lighting, provide consistent lighting quality, highlight existing community assets, unify lighting throughout the commercial district, identify and eliminate dark areas, activate public spaces after dark, and identify key features to highlight through creative lighting approaches. So they came up with the study that took a look at all of the existing lighting that exists in South Bethlehem. And they then took a look at what it could be. And they made that recommendation to the steering committee. And the steering committee liked what they came up with and said, is there a way that we could do a demonstration street that would demonstrate to the residents and to the all of the stakeholders in the South Bethlehem community that would show them what this lighting could do for the whole community? So it was lighting that would be meant to unify, to have a unified look, enhance pedestrian traffic, and to make South Bethlehem have the appearance so that lighting at one end of South Bethlehem would reflect the lighting at the other end of the South Bethlehem. And as these proposals came in, I remember there was one that over the Greenway at one end, they wanted, one particular group wanted to hang colored lights across the overhead of the Greenway as a way to announce a particular festival. While at the other end of the Greenway, they were looking to light trees. And so there was no rhyme or reason to how things were going. And the idea was to come up with a concept. If you're going to do lighting, let's take a look at what would make sense across the board. What we then came up with was the demonstration street. And it was suggested that the demonstration street could be Polk Street and it could be called Theater Row. Zollner Arts Center is at the south end of Polk Street. 4th Street is Touchstone Theater. Down at the Greenway is the amphitheater that Touchstone is really anxious to use as an outdoor venue, and many other theater organizations would also use that. Charter Arts is at 3rd Street, and then Steel Stacks is down at the north end. So the idea was that Polk Street would be what we would call Theater Row, and the lighting along Theater Row would demonstrate what north-south lighting could be for the city. However, the idea of Theater Row is that it would just be for Polk Street, so that the things that would occur along Polk Street are not things that would occur throughout all of South Bethlehem. It's just that some of the elements of the lighting would be consistent. So on this slide here, which is, I guess, is that, I'm not, I can't read. Is that 1st Street? What is First? Okay, 1st Street and coming down Polk, is that? Okay, and that light off to the right there, yeah, that light is suggested that would become the street light for the north-south streets. Now, this is just their suggestion. It doesn't mean that this is, but this would then identify the north-south streets throughout Bethlehem with that particular light fixture. And it would go along Polk Street. So if you could go to the next slide. And going up, we have the existing Acorn light fixtures that are already present along the Greenway and along the east-west streets. But then the other thing that they were suggesting is putting lighting in trees along the Greenway, for instance, and in front of some of the buildings. And you'll see that as we go through. If you want to go to the next slide. And then they're taking a look at other things that they could do to, again, enhance the pedestrian safety and lighting along the pedestrian way. And so the lighting in the ground as well as the uplighting in the trees. Again, the Acorn lighting and the north-south lighting that they identified as an example. And just if you move on to the next one. Again, these are, and lighting would be on particular art objects, especially they were looking at the sculptures that were up at Zollner. And go to the next one. And then on the buildings themselves, they're suggesting that the buildings, especially the theater buildings along Theater Row, would have distinctive lighting characteristics that would identify these structures as part of Theater Row. So this is what they suggested for Charter Arts at the north end, and then and across the street at Molinari's, uplighting that would go on some of the commercial buildings. And again, these are just suggestions, and nobody has agreed to do any of this. It's just, I'm showing it to you just so that you know what is being suggested. And to the next one. And this is a type of lighting that could go on some of the structures along Theater Row, again, to highlight that particular street. And Touchstone Theater, again, would have that type of lighting, which is the two different types, the uplighting and the downlighting, as well as the string lights. And now that Touchstone owns the lot next to it, it would actually go around that corner. And the next one. And again, some more of the commercial buildings along Polk Street. And then up at Zollner, different types of projection lighting, as well as lighting for sculpture, lighting of the flags, and some of the lightings that could be overhead. So again, these are ideas that the lighting consultant came up with. We are going to be talking to the organizations, the theater organizations. We've already talked to Lehigh. We've talked to Touchstone. They're all very excited about these ideas and the possibility of highlighting the kind of a theater-like district in South Bethlehem. Jody is I know she's streaming in, but she is the head of the head of the steering committee, and she has just so that you know a little bit about where this organization is going. It started Southside Vision 2020, has now become Southside Tomorrow, and Southside Tomorrow will annually invest $325,000 worth of corporate donations through 2027 through initiatives that focus on ways to integrate the needs and wants of current residents into long-term sustainable solutions that both modernize and preserve the integrity of the Southside community. We incorporate an emphasis on youth development, community engagement, public spaces, housing advocacy, and urban agriculture to build a meaningful and sustainable environment for residents and future generations. This, the Neighborhood Partnership Program, is the tax credit program that encourages businesses to invest, and that's where the financial support comes for these programs. So again, I felt that it was important for this group to know what the Southside Tomorrow group is doing in terms of lighting, and especially in terms of Theater Row. And I'm happy to take any questions that you may have or hear your comments, your ideas, or something else you think that we should do.
I think it's a neat idea. I'm curious to know what projected cost is for those numbers of blocks on each of the north-south. Because how does that relate to the investment money that's available?
Well, and
Be accomplished.
well, that's what our goal. We received a certain amount of money to do a demonstration block, and we're working together with the city right now. We have some money that will actually pay for the fixtures, and we had a preliminary call with the electrician and the public works, and we're going to be having another meeting with them. We had asked our consultant to come up with an estimate so that we knew what we were dealing with. They gave us an estimate. That was back in 2020, and then the pandemic hit. And so now our estimate is out of date, and we're working to get that updated. But we would work to get that investment from the community to work with the city to have this implemented. And we'll also be working with the community to let the stakeholders in the community know what it is we're doing. So that everybody has that it's not just something that appears out of nowhere, but that it becomes something that the community supports.
Lighting is so important in a community. And we're charged in the historic district, as you know, you're aware, to try to make sure the lighting stays historically appropriate.
Right.
So it seems like I'm not sure exactly how we do that because I'm not a lighting consultant for the time period of this historic area. And the question is would the lighting in the historic area be different than the lighting in other parts of South Bethlehem?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question, because I think that is at the crux of the issue here, that the lighting for South Bethlehem would remain in that historic purview, but the lighting along Polk Street and Theater Row would probably go beyond that. Certainly theaters, we would be looking at the theaters that did live on the south side at one time. But we would also be looking to move this particular element, this Theater Row element, a little bit beyond what was historically there, because it's different. It's not a, first of all, the buildings are already there. And we would be asking the commission to take a look at submissions that come before you with a little bit of leeway toward a Theater Row component.
Are these lights that would like stay on all the time? Like, is there a time limit for when then? So like they're not disrupting the neighborhoods around them? I mean, what's the concept for, like, what's the consideration for the neighbors that live during, this construction and the lighting that's going to be present?
Yeah, I think that it would be, when the theaters are active. And I think that would certainly be a negotiable item, because I agree, I wouldn't want to live across the street from that either.
Our guidelines are fairly limited. It's not spelled out, but basically, they don't mention any lighting that's not attached to it. So city lights don't fall under our purview to begin with, as far as I can tell. Illumination is really only referenced in our guidelines having to do with signage and awnings. It's the only place I can find where there's any kind of language about lighting. But they do state a couple of things. Now, these predate LED, and I see LED everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They're
all LED. Mm-hmm.
Our guidelines talk about low wattage lighting. Recently, with LED lighting, there's no such thing as wattage. That has to do with Kelvin range of temperature.
Right.
We cannot require, because we have no guidelines to say yes or no. Our recommendation so far with LED lighting in our district has been 3,500 Kelvin.
Mm-hmm.
I only see LED, I don't see Kelvin scale anywhere. So I don't know if that's come into discussion yet. I can speak from personal experience as an architect, unless you tell a lighting engineer, or better said, an electrician, they tend to go with the brightest possible.
I agree.
And speak to neighbors, that can be a rude awakening, literal rude awakening for someone with a 4,000 or 5,000 Kelvin fixture.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have the ability to restrict things. It's not spelled out. I can only talk about examples we've had in the last couple of years. That has been a request or recommendation to limit Kelvin to 3,000.
Well, I think one of I hear what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying, and I get that. I think one of the things that will also come up is that there may be, and I don't know what these are yet, because we haven't actually sat down with Touchstone and Zollner yet in a specific way, or Charter Arts, or even going down towards Steel Stacks. But I think that there may be elements that have not been seen before. And I guess what I'm wondering is there a way that there could be exceptions made for Theater Row? That this would probably not fit into every single instance that would be presented would be fitting into what the guidelines are that you have currently and what would be necessary in order for some leeway for something called Theater Row? Or is that totally out of the question? Because if it is totally out of the question, then we might as well, it's kind of,
Well, I think you've asked a couple of things right there. The first thing is Jeff just basically told us we don't really have a lot of things to say about a lot of the lighting.
I was going to continue. It does mention specifically neon, because neon falls within the period of our district.
Right.
It actually encourages the use of neon where appropriate, but that's beyond that. I can't give you much guidance. It does caution against the fake neon sign, the kind of stock stuff you find in home improvement centers, et cetera, that say open or barbershop. They mean real neon. And I know that current neon is slightly different, but it does reference that, and I saw neon mentioned also.
It sounded to me like what you were asking was if an applicant from somewhere on Theater Row or in the south side as this expands were to come before the commission to have lighting on their building, like depicting there with uplight and downlight and so on. That does fall in our purview, I mean,
When it's on the building?
when it's on the building. And I don't know that we have an answer that we're necessarily capable of giving you tonight. Because,
yeah, and I don't think I need an answer tonight. This was
I
mostly,
think the idea is good, and I think it merits a discussion amongst the commissioners
Well, the other
as
thing
to how
is,
we would deal with it.
the other thing is, frankly, we've got a brand new city council who's looking differently at what's going on in South Bethlehem. And it might not be a huge problem to have a little area called South Side Theater District, perhaps.
Yeah.
All city council has to do is change the ordinance a little bit and it totally fits, right? In theory.
Darlene?
I'm not sure if the light, are you talking about reviewing the way the lights are attached? Or are you talking about
Well,
looking at the, because that's not really on the building, the light, you know what I'm saying?
well, not where it's projected there, but on some of the buildings, like the Touchstone screen showed what appeared to me to be a fixture that had mounted on the building that had light cascading down to the sidewalk and also up along the face of the facade. That's on the building. That's certainly something that we would review.
But you're talking about the attachment of the lights onto the building.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but not necessarily the light itself or the color of the light or something like that.
I don't know. It would seem to me, now we didn't review the lighting of Church Street, but I wonder how that compares in its construction or its definition to the lighting of Church Street. Because that was done pretty much throughout the south side. And
was that reviewed by, was that approved by this
it happened before.
commission?
I haven't experienced it.
It hasn't come before us since I've been on, but it exists as a broad-based approach to highlighting features of the south side. So it's, however that was determined, this might be something that could coordinate with that background.
My only other question was, often the so-called festoon lining trails has movement to it. We do have specific language that says the lining cannot link or trail or anything kind of ticker.
Can't be movable.
Nothing is to move, and so these are static images, so I don't know, was there any movement or trailing or on off?
Yeah, I think on some of those, on some of the buildings where you see the lighting, yeah, that would be movable, that there would be movement in the lighting.
So it does have specific language, they cannot move, flash, or intermittently. One of the committee members looked at one of the South Side movie theaters back. I need to follow up on that, but I thought they said there were moving lights on that marquee. And that's why they felt this was appropriate. Would that, I mean, if that was the case, I didn't see a marquee, I saw the building facade being framed with lights. Many of these I haven't seen.
I think suffice to say, we're not challenging it. But how we deal with it isn't really clear to us yet either.
okay. And I appreciate that. And I mean, that's why before,
It makes sense to have this sort of discussion because it's got wide implication. Be consistent with how we approach our applicants.
mhm,
One can't get something that the other can't.
right.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
We have had people that have, this string of LEDs inside the window and it trails and we've had them
Mhm.
removed.
Yeah.
It's not exactly what you're proposing, but
Mhm.
it's kind of a similar concept.
Yeah, like that marquee to the right, the upper right corner.
That appears to be like permanently fixed. So we're talking about more like tracer lights.
It looked like on Zoner,
Yeah.
where the wasn't it Zoner that had sort of the,
Charter Arts.
was it Charter Arts? Okay, yeah.
Like this,
Yes,
where
yes.
they're kind of fly around a little bit.
Those were permanent. He said those were fixtures. I don't know.
No, I thought you said these lights up here, like these greens and yellows, were going to kind of sway across the building.
No.
Across the building.
No,
Are they
Not-
gonna use that tape?
I don't think
Okay,
those
for
were. I
moving.
thought the ones, if you go to the other slide, no,
That was a lighting tape.
like those,
Like
the idea that the light would move along the string.
So like the Christmas lights you're saying would move? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
Probably not on that type of a building, but on a theater facade, the lights might move. That was my understanding.
No, I understand now. And just to reiterate, we're recommending body, whatever, because we think it's appropriate.
Right.
Okay, well, I really appreciate the conversation and your feedback.
Don't forget, there's I don't even need that thing. Where Polk Street crosses Third, where that parking lot, that's where the parking garage is gonna be. So there's a whole other building that isn't even there yet.
Right.
Okay, you have to take that into consideration. What would you do with that? Do we have copies of that garage or that you could get, that we could give her so she could see what it looks like? Because if we're gonna do that, we gotta do that new garage too.
I agree. Yeah, our thought was, we talked to Darlene about who we should talk to, is to talk to all of anybody that's planning anything, to get them on board before
Mhm.
the design is complete so that they could tie into this. But thank you. That would be great to have that.
They want to talk to the industrial history as well.
That's a good idea.
That's a big building that could stand to have some more illumination.
That's a good idea.
Not in the district.
It's not in the district, so
Oh, okay.
they could do whatever.
But
they wanted.
you can access,
But
you do access it
but
through
it's
Polk.
adjacent- It's adjacent to Third Street. Well,
right?
It would be another stakeholder.
Who was that? Is
The
he-
Museum of Industrial History.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep.
And I'm open to any other suggestions or thoughts that you have. Please feel free to email me and I'll take it back to the committee. I'm not exactly sure how I got to be the chair of this committee. I think I must have missed a meeting.
That's anybody who does anything becomes the chair. That's the way that works.
Oh, sure. I actually made a couple copies, but then I thought, well, this is pretty boring. I don't know if people. But sure, if
Here,
This
I'll
is-
pass them out.
it's just kind of the history of where we've been.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your time and listening to what we've been up to. And we think it's exciting. I think it's exciting.
It's 5 years, right?
Yes, 6 years. And, well, you don't count the pandemic, right? We lost.
Mhm.
That year doesn't count.
Yeah.
That could be pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
The thing is, how do you make it historic?
Okay, other items.
I'll make a motion to pass the minutes.
Yeah, that was the next.
Oh.
Fine. Okay, there's a motion for to approve the minutes.
I'd second that motion.
All in favor?
I'm,
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and the other item was we were to have some ideas about potential awards or recognitions for projects that have been completed. One of them is the Brinker Lofts that Gary mentioned on at Adams Street. Another one that I think we may want to pay attention to a little bit is Seven Sirens. And possibly another one, which was a real simple thing, was just a sign and some paint and stuff. But I think that the Couch Potato at 306 Broadhead merits some recognition, especially since 314 belongs in blighted buildings.
It is.
Is it?
Good.
Somebody told me that Couch Potato is excellent.
Yeah,
I have not been
they've
there
had a
yet.
few people in there. I see them,
Has it opened?
but they did a nice
Yeah.
job in there. It's
Every time I drive by.
Every time it's closed.
so, but those were my thoughts. If there, others that you folks have, we can list them and decide who's going to get them.
So tell me excuse me, let me rephrase even how I thought about that.
We're still broadcasting.
Yes.
Want me to turn it off?
No, we're good.
No, it's okay. Yeah, no, I just wanted to rethink and rephrase how I expressed. So, because I'm trying to be positive about it. What did you like about Seven Sirens? I mean, what's giving you the idea that we? that should be
I
part
think
of it?
that although it was a long drawn out process to develop what design finally happened,
I mean, we did it for them.
it was a long process to establish what was going to be constructed. But it was done, and it was done with detail, and it was done carefully. I think we need to recognize that our applicants went through a lot of effort to achieve a historically appropriate construction.
That was pretty well said. Thank you.
And then,
So how many awards are we supposed to give out, Craig?
I don't know.
I don't remember doing this all the
Darlene,
time.
do you
We've only sort of done this occasionally.
I wasn't really involved in this before, but I was kind of sticking around because I thought you need some city support or participation or whatever. I don't think there's.
By the way, it's nice to see you. I didn't think you would be here.
I could reach out to Phil.
That would be,
Yeah.
well, so Phil, I think, was the guy who really
Phil,
started.
yeah,
the
Phil was
awards.
kind of the leader of the awards. He still
Because
tells me about it.
he wanted city council to see every month, or
Right.
see every year that there was stuff
Right.
going on.
So I could reach out to Phil and see what he feels is appropriate. Like, 1, 2, 3. I mean, we haven't done it in 3 years.
Because
Yeah.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
So maybe 3 would be appropriate.
I don't think, well, and 2 are commercial. Well, and then I guess all 3 are commercial, but that's okay.
yeah,
Right.
Brinker Lofts is residential commercial, so it's close.
Yeah, but it's a
Is it-
rental property. It's not,
Oh, it's definitely commercial.
yeah, it's commercial.
It's definitely commercial, but it's more. It has a residential component to it, I should
Yeah.
say.
I think at one time we did recognize Bond.
What about Bruce Campbell's project, right? The Happy Tap. Can't even think.
Another good one.
The Nest.
The
The
Nest.
Nest. I'm sorry.
That
yes.
turned out really well.
It looks beautiful. I haven't been in it yet, but it really.
I
looks good
don't
from outside.
care. I honestly don't care if we would recognize 5 of them. That could make a splash in terms of publication, and it would certainly emphasize, the efforts that people have to go through to develop on the south side.
If you guys would like, what I'll volunteer to do is, since we haven't really done this in a while, I'll reach out to Phil, like I said, but maybe I'll go back the last 3 years, pull a list of completed projects for our next HCC meeting, and then we could all kind of.
Yeah, this is just,
Or
all I wanted to
maybe-
do was make a springboard of the
Yeah.
kinds of things that we were.
Yeah.
Maybe if you just
Right, for me too. So
Maybe you could just send an email with the addresses on it.
all right.
No, you don't want to do that.
No, I have no problem doing that. I do. That's might be
I
even
mean,
easier.
just because that way I can look at that list and then come in at the next HCC and say, "Oh yeah, I remember this project. It was really good. Let's do this one." Or
I have no problem doing that. I'll pull that together and email it off to everyone, and then
Okay.
just kind of do a straw poll. And
That'd be good.
yeah,
And maybe we'll have a larger quorum.
but maybe we could even have different levels of awards, like for large commercial, medium commercial, what a residential
a
component,
residential
Yeah.
award.
or adaptive reuse in the case of Brinker Lofts, what I mean.
Well, yeah, and actually, when you talk about adaptive reuse, taking the parking garage at Seven Sirens.
I think they're all adaptive reuse, which I think is great.
I think that, yeah. I mean, so let's do that then.
That's a good category.
That's a good
Yeah.
category.
I think that is a great category.
Okay. Well, those are just some things that I wanted to make sure we talked about it. Gary had suggested that, we have a little bit of discussion about it so that we could prepare to do this for the May council meeting.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Motion adjourned.
Aye. Oh, we need a second.
Second. Oh, second.
Aye. All right. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Praise the Lord. It's still loud and light outside.